You put together a mixtape where you have really aggressive music to get you up to the level of playing with that aggression and fire. The truly crazy ones listen to music to bring them down.
Yo, what's going on? Welcome to Owls at Dawn. We are just two dudes from Southern California who studied philosophy, politics, and religion around the world and decided to start a podcast where we could bullshit with impunity. I am Austin Hayden Smith.
And I am Troy Polidori.
And this week we're going to be doing a kind of special bonus episode, I guess you could call it. Yeah, dude?
Near and dear to my heart, you know.
Hey, we have had some requests, okay? We have legit had requests that we talk about this topic. So,
which we've used as rationalizations for doing it.
Exactly. So, we are going to be having our friend on, Matt Telly. He's been on in the past as well. But we're going to be talking about the docuseries on Netflix called The Last Dance, about the Michael Jordan Bulls from the, what was it, 97, 98 season?
Yeah, and it's on ESPN here in the States, not on Netflix.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay, cool. Yeah. Yeah, it was weird because
I had to use a VPN to get those lovely curse words from Netflix.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the ESPN one is all kinds of censored.
Oh, so it came out on Sundays on ESPN for you.
Mm-hmm. But no,
dude,
I
it came out
used a VPN to get those curse words, man. I got to get those Jordan curse words, man.
The uncensored, yeah. It came out Monday night at I think 6 or 7 p.m. I shit you not, every Monday during this run, I guess it was 5 weeks that they were airing them. Every Monday was I would draw myself a bath and I would I'd have my iPad set up in my bathtub and I would sit there and I would watch the two documentaries. It was the 2 episodes. It was so good.
Yeah, I did the same thing on Mondays after working all day. Around 5 o'clock, I'd stop. I'd make some tea, get a snack, and watch some Last Dance.
It was so good. I actually feel empty because I don't have it now. So I will have to rewatch it maybe at one point. But anyway, we're going to be talking about that. We're going to be talking about the cultural impact. We're going to be talking about some of the dramas, all that other good shit. So normally we would do a shitty minute and a sticky leaves this episode, but we kind of went long and it's a pretty kind of, I don't know, would you say off the beaten path kind of episode that we try to whip around? I'm not trying to justify it. It is what it is. It's a standalone.
Yeah, it's even more extemporaneous than usual, and there's plenty of shitty minutes and sticky leaves throughout, so you'll get your fill.
Absolutely. Yeah. So we'll go ahead and jump into that now with Matt. All right, sick. So now it is time for our main segment. As we said at the top of the episode, we have a guest this week, one of our old buddies from college and former guest on the show as well. Matt Telly is joining us. What's up, dude?
What's going on, everybody?
Now, we've had all kinds of different topic suggestions for hey, let's get Matt on to talk about this and that, serious stuff. But we decided, why don't we do something superficial and get him on to talk about sports?
I'm your man. I got you.
I know. So we're going to be talking about The Last Dance. Now, before people start running for the hills, because they're oh, I hate basketball, I don't want to talk about basketball, this is going to be fun. Now, we do know that there are a couple of people that love it when we talk about this kind of stuff, so obviously this is in your wheelhouse. For those of you who don't know, we're going to make this interesting and curious and culturally kind of topical as well. So stay and join in the fun, okay?
We're also going to dwell in the bullshit, family drama shit, melodramatic stuff, so we'll do that too.
Yeah, and in the age of fucking reality television, everybody needs a little drama in their lives, right? And rather than watching, I don't know, whatever soap opera you're watching or telenovela or whatever, why not get into some real basketball drama? Some good sports drama. Yeah?
Sounds good.
Why don't we do this? Why don't we start by talking about our favorite piece of drama from the show?
Well, why don't we first say, for anybody who doesn't know, since, maybe a good portion of our audience doesn't even know anything about The Last Dance besides the fact that it's about basketball, or maybe Michael Jordan. Just really briefly, The Last Dance is a recent ESPN 10 parts documentary series about the final season of the Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen-led Chicago Bulls, 1997-98. It was their 6th championship in 8 years that they had won, and the end of their dynasty. the NBA allowed a television crew to follow the team around the entire season and playoffs during that year, which was kind of unprecedented at the time. And then it wasn't released for a good 20 plus years because Michael Jordan had exclusive rights to the footage, and for whatever reason, didn't want that coming out at any point in the last 20 years. It's been said that it's not a coincidence that LeBron won his, kind of his zenith moment in 2016 when he beat the, Dynasty Warriors. Then the conversation begins about whether LeBron's better than Jordan for doing that. And all of a sudden, Jordan greenlights that summer working on this documentary series. So there's something in there about Jordan wanting this to come out to bring himself back into that conversation, I would think.
I mean, can we just say that one of the consistent themes throughout every single one of these episodes is pettiness?
Yeah, it's par for the course.
My man was tired of just being a meme. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
all these kids,
crying Jordan.
All these kids, all they know about him is got a really bad, tough-looking crying face that they could superimpose on everything. It was like, no, I'm the greatest.
Yeah, it legit bothers him too. It's not even a joke. Like, he's bothered by the fact that the crying Jordan meme is how most young kids know him today.
Oh, 100%.
He's brought it up on several occasions in public.
Oh, has he?
Yeah, at Kobe's funeral, he brought it up. I mean, jokingly and self-effacing, but it's a thing that comes to mind. I think he even, maybe not during his Hall of Fame speech, because I don't think, had he had done the crying Jordan meme is from his Hall of Fame speech, isn't it?
Yeah, it's from it.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I know at least on a couple occasions he's brought it up. Most recently at Kobe's funeral.
I don't remember the specifics of the Hall of Fame speech, but didn't he in his Hall of Fame speech continue to exhibit the kind of competitive pettiness that he's known for by calling people out and like challenging people and shit like that?
Dude, he brought one of his former high school teammates who beat him out for a position when he was like a sophomore or something. He brought him to the Hall of Fame speech just to roast that dude. Probably hasn't spoken to that guy in like 30 years. He's like, no, come to this thing. He's just like, look at this dude. This is who they thought was better than me.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So do you think that this documentary has actually changed people's opinions about Jordan, his legacy? Do you think the younger generation, the Zoomers and stuff like that, are going to start to be like, oh, yeah, maybe Jordan actually was the greatest? Like, how do you think this is going to have a basketball and maybe even cultural impact?
I don't know. I think that, when we look at old footage, I don't know, like, think about who our parents liked. Like, oh, Oscar Robertson was great. We watch footage of him and we're like, this dude's playing against a bunch of plumbers, And,
right.
And I think that people thought that about Jordan. And you go back and you watch it and you're like, all right, so some of these dudes wouldn't make it in the NBA today, but this dude, Michael Jordan's like pretty clean. He's out there doing moves that would work and translate into today's basketball.
Yeah, what's most incredible from watching that footage? I mean, I remember especially the second three-peat from the Bulls. I was an avid NBA fan at the time and watched a lot of those games. The first three-peat, I was too young to really remember, other than, I was a huge Laker fan. So when Jordan beat Magic in 91, that was an upsetting time. And then he basically, Magic contracted HIV like right after that. And it was the end of everything, right? But I don't remember the basketball very well. So watching that footage, dude, Jordan he had the most incredible hands you've ever seen in a basketball player. The things he could do, he could palm the ball while dribbling with one hand, which is just, I don't know that anybody else in league history can do it the same way that he can, along with the incredible athleticism. So yeah, you're seeing him doing things out there that even guys like LeBron and Dwayne Wade and kind of the other, Kevin Durant, other great wings of the last 20 years can't really do. He wasn't as great a shooter as some of these guys, but you can imagine if he grew up with the three-point line being as prevalent as it is now, he probably would have been.
Do you think, it's so hard, right, to actually do the comparison, the greatness comparison, because everybody is within their historical context and within their athletic context, right? So Wilt Chamberlain was the, quote, most dominant player, even though he lost to Bill Russell all the time. But he was the most dominant player. But like you just said, he's playing against plumbers, right? Like literally, he's playing against people who had full-time jobs outside of basketball, right? And people who didn't grow up with sports science and who didn't grow up playing basketball from when they were fucking 4 years old and doing the type of training and eating the type of diets and participating in the type of drills, and they didn't understand the shooting mechanics in the exact same way. It wasn't like put down to a science. So like, is it even like, how do you determine these generational debates? Is it about who was the greatest within their context? Is it about like who's the greatest basketball player, like who has the skills, like who is all around the one who plays the game the best? Or is it playing the game within the context? Is it winning the most championships? Like, how do you even start to have this debate?
I think this debate's just for content, because like you said, there's no way to actually adjudicate this. There's no like set of guidelines that anybody agrees to. We each come with our own perspective. We have what we feel, but really it's who's the player that made me feel good, and then the rationale comes in to undergird it afterwards. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it makes being at the barbershop better.
That's true. That's right.
Yeah, post-hoc rationalizations are the point of sports commentary.
Yeah. I mean, so with that said, is Jordan the greatest? Or do you think, like, did this put the conversation to rest? Do you think people are still going to be like, nah, LeBron might be the greatest? Or do you think this documentary was kind of like, no, I'm still here. Remember.
I don't know. My thought on it is, as much as I think LeBron's the greatest player I've seen in my adulthood, and it's not even really a question, dude won 6 championships in 8 years, and 1 3/4 of the ones in between he didn't play. It's not a thing you could do now. And a lot of that's, you can argue that the expansion of the NBA happened during that time, the second three-peat. They moved the 3-point line in for like 2 of those years, I think, 96 and 97. So there's a lot of weird stuff happening that makes the league weaker and whatever. But I mean, I can't imagine any set of rules that would let a team basically win, for all intents and purposes, 6 straight championships. With, I guess, not even a team, just basically three people, Jordan, Pippen, and Phil Jackson, as being the, only members who were continual throughout that process. So yeah, I mean, LeBron's book's not closed. Like, he's still going. I mean, he's still arguably the best player in the NBA right now, even at 35, 36. So it's not over yet, but I don't think that he's quite past him yet. Even if his zenith, like 2016 as a moment for LeBron, I think is better than any single moment for Jordan. Jordan didn't beat anybody like the Dynasty Warriors. So that's something, but I don't know if the zenith is going to match Jordan's continual dominance. What do you think, Telly?
Culturally, nothing can touch Jordan. Like, that was one of the takeaways from this whole doc, was like, the man had to sit in an office with a couple like middle-aged security guards, and that was his entire life was confined to that. Just outside of those walls, everybody is just trying to like touch his garment. You know what I mean? Like, you can't go anywhere worldwide. Even when they went and did the Olympics, like, everybody needed a piece of him. He was in every commercial. He had the biggest shoe line. Like, nothing can touch it. And he was undeniably cool until he started wearing JNCOs all the time. You know what I mean? Like, he's out there with like the warm-ups and the gold chain at the All-Star, doing the dunk contest. Like, that, there was several times where like, like the drip or whatever was just like out of control.
But you know what's funny? Like, I don't remember thinking of Jordan as being outside the sneakers, of being as like a fashion or style type of guy. It was kind of like it was almost like he didn't have a really set style, but that kind of was his like I don't give a fuck attitude that made him so cool. Whereas like somebody like Russell Westbrook tries really hard, right? Yeah. Like, he's wearing his fucking glasses and his backpack to like post-game pressers and stuff like that. But like, it was almost like he's wearing, like, Jordan's wearing those huge 90s oversized suits where like the suit jacket is like got coattails almost. It's so long, and it's so baggy. But like, I didn't realize that he was such a fashion icon, I guess you could say, or example outside of the sneakers. But I guess he kind of was, huh?
Through the first three-peat. The second three-peat, he came in with like hardcore dad energy. But before that, like, he knew what to do.
Yeah.
There's also the second three-peat has Rodman involved in it. So are you really going to try that hard when Rodman's next to you? He's going to soak up all the fashion-related energy anyway.
That's true, man. That's true. What were your favorite episodes, I guess, throughout this? So for people that didn't watch it yet, each episode, or sometimes they were released in pairs, they kind of really balanced nice to each other, right? Like the first one was kind of Jordan's beginnings tied to Pippen. The second one was Rodman and Jackson, which I thought was a really great sort of way of kind of just talking about like how do you control the monster, right? Which was kind of cool. So you've got like the supposed psychological Zen master and then this like this uncontrollable force that gets brought into the team. And so it was really kind of paired together nicely. What was your favorite like either week of released episodes or what was your favorite single episode?
I really liked the Rodman one. Like I remember the Rodman like thing back in the 90s, but not all the specifics.
Yeah.
Like I didn't remember him missing practice during the finals. Like Dennis Rodman had the most 1998 that anybody could possibly have. Like dating Carmen Electra, he's on the Bulls with MJ. He skips practice to go be a part of like the NWO, like WWF thing. Like it's wild. This guy was just like, but you could count on
and
him.
didn't get punished for it. They just accepted it like, yeah, of course he did.
But that's because he can come back from that and give you 18 boards. Like that. Like that one, the one where he just went to Vegas for a couple days just to like blow off some steam and comes back and
That's
beats
crazy.
everybody at conditioning drills and practice the next day. Like it's just wild.
Oh, that was such a great story. And then, so Jordan comes to his apartment or whatever in Chicago, right? Because he's still missing. And there's the story of Carmen Electra saying she's hiding underneath the sheets because she doesn't want to get confronted by Michael Jordan at the door, right? And then Rodman shows up and like, what does he say? Steve Kerr and John Paxson, or maybe it wasn't Steve Kerr yet. I don't remember. Judd Bushler and Steve Kerr were always leading the running drills, right? The small guards. And then Rodman just starts lapping them, right? And they're all having to catch up and they're all mad at him for it. It's incredible. The guy was like the greatest athlete in basketball history, I think, Rodman, as pure athletic talent is concerned.
It was monstrous.
Yeah. He would be a phenomenon if he were around in the age of social media. Could you even imagine? Like, do you think it would be something that would be too much and it would have destroyed him actually?
So do you guys remember that thing where DeAndre Jordan was going to sign with the Mavericks in free agency, and then the Clippers like held him hostage, Doc
Yes.
Rivers and stuff, and there was like people were tweeting out emojis of like chairs and like chairs holding up against doors so that you couldn't get out.
Paul
and Mark
Pierce,
Cuban was driving around the block trying to find the house where he was at to get him and stuff. That was like the greatest day in basketball social media history. And then Paul Pierce tries to tweet out like a rocket or something, but he puts an icon, an ICO image instead of an emoji because he doesn't know how to do it. That's the greatest day in social media history for basketball. If the Rodman shit had been going on with social media, it would have been epic. He was disappearing for days at a time. There'd be people with like following him around in Vegas, right? Like video recording him on their phones doing crazy shit. Maybe he would have tampered it down if it had existed, but I would hope not.
Yeah, he would have had to, right? Like you still had some level of secrecy or of privacy. I mean, not really privacy, but like now it's just everything is transparent, right? I don't even think that he would be capable. I almost feel like it would stifle him. Either it would like destroy him or it would stifle him,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he was dealing with those pressures at the time. He talked about feeling like he was stifled, feeling like he wasn't able to be who he felt that he was inside and all this. Like if this happened today, there's no way he wouldn't have made it.
Who's the bad boy of the NBA now? Like who is it? Draymond because he kicked dude in the nuts. Like what's the closest thing we got?
I mean, Draymond's more just hated by other teams, right? And then his own team has to kind of reel him in, but he's not really a bad boy in the sense of like disappearing or breaking all the rules or getting away with shit. I'm trying to think. I'm not sure who that would even be.
I mean, has there even been another?
I think they've stamped that out.
That's what I was wondering. Yeah. Do you think that's what they did? Did they stamp that out? Like this can't be allowed anymore?
It can't be allowed, and like you said, all these new players were part of the AAU circuit since they were kids, so they've been getting media training since they were,
That's true.
7, 8 years old.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's true because, I mean, a lot of people talk about how the NBA is a players' league and it at least allows for people to have some kind of individual expression and stuff like that. But it still is pretty manicured, right?
Oh, yeah. Ever since, like, the Malice at the Palace, they went hardcore on you can, exhibit your free expression, but it has to be within very particular bounds. And
that's Matt Telly's boy, Steven Jackson, man.
It is Captain Jack.
Throwing up gang signs when he hits a three sometimes.
Maybe had an alleged incident outside of a strip club with a firearm, defending a teammate. I don't know. These are the players that I want on my team. That's all I know. Like they,
who I really like? He's got like similar kind of energy. Is it Marcus Smart? I think who he has like crazy. The I will fight you like seriously I will fight you energy, and yeah, like he's like one of those. I want one of those guys on my team.
You gotta have someone that's just a little bit crazy that's there to come back behind you. I mean, like that was the We Believe Warriors was an entire squad of those guys, plus Andris Biedrins, just standing out like a weirdo. But then, like that's what Draymond does now because Steph's out there, hitting his shots, and he likes to dance a little bit. People want to throw him around, and Draymond's there to kind of make sure that no one takes it too far. That's what Charles Oakley did,
Yeah.
Yeah, the enforcer. Every championship team has to have that guy.
Yeah, I was going to say, you used to have that more, though, didn't you? Like, I was even, like, when they were talking about the Indiana Pacers, I was like, oh, fuck, I forgot all about the Davis brothers. But Dale Davis, he was like that for the Pacers, right?
Oh, yeah.
And then... Yeah, Charles Oakley, Charles Mason. Like, you had those dudes that would fucking
Anthony
bruise.
Mason?
Anthony Mason. Sorry. Yeah, Anthony Mason. Like, you had those guys. Whereas now you kind of don't because the game is so finessed, right? And it's so much just about motion offense, shooting the three. A lot of European players that didn't have the physicality. All the fouls now. It's just totally a different game.
That's the Malice of the Palace thing. Like Troy was saying.
Yeah, and also, I think part of it's also the beautification of the game. Like, as much as I pine for enforcers and how fun it is to have guys who will kind of, knock you around and stuff like that, you look at those scores at the end of those games in the 90s, especially in the playoffs, it's 83-76, and you're just, dude, like, I would rather that be a half, man.
Bro, for real. You're looking at this and it's like, oh, this is a crazy game. It's back and forth, all this. And then it's like, start of the fourth quarter, let's see what happens. And it's like, 66-62, and I'm like, bro, come on, man.
Hey, is that because of possessions, or is it because field goal percentage and because of like, I mean, I'm sure it's a combination of things, or is it because of like exclusively the 3-point thing? Is it because defense and you can't foul people the same? Like, what is the recipe for that?
Yeah, I mean, it's all those things. It's the lack of 3-point shooting. It's the inefficient 2-point shots. But mostly I think it's the defensive rules. Back then, they didn't have the ability to do, they had the ability to hand check, right? So individual players couldn't really get around a guy very easily. And you can't even touch a guy now. Like a guy like Steph Curry, as much as I love Steph Curry, the ability to hand check a 6'3", 170-pound guy is the reason why there are no other 6'3", 170-pound superstars in history other than Isaiah Thomas, and then there's some other guys who are kind of good, like Tiny Archibald, Rod Strickland.
Iverson.
Yeah, Iverson's an obvious exemption to that. So there's not a lot of guys that size who can succeed that way. But now you have Dame Lillard and Steph Curry and Trae Young and all these guys.
But imagine 80s rules with 2010s screens. You know what I mean? Like, get Draymond or Bogut out there throwing screens in the 80s, and that would look wild. That would look like a hockey check.
Yeah, it would be crazy. That's part of the enjoyable thing about thinking about transitioning guys between eras is how their skills would be used in different eras. And I think the reason why guys like Jordan and LeBron are at the top of anybody's list of greatest of all time is because they would have been great in any era. They're in no way, I think, dependent upon their era for their greatness. Some guys are not that way.
Yeah. I always laugh at the people, who opine for the 80s, 70s basketball. Are like, oh, these new kids, they're not tough enough. And I'm like, Michael Jordan's decided to start lifting weights at 30. You know what I mean? Like LeBron going back in time as a 6'8", 6'9", chiseled 280-pound person. Like, I think he'd be fine. And Jordan would be great now. Yeah.
LeBron in the 80s, hand checks would have meant nothing to LeBron. Yeah, but put one defender on him and you can't double team him until he has the ball.
Right.
Like, that would have been something else for LeBron.
Yeah. Yeah, injuries, though, is another aspect, right? He might have gotten injured, which he only had, one serious injury in his career last season?
I don't know, man. He's bionic.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, what else? Favorite episodes, pettiness, hot takes? What are you guys feeling?
So I got, my favorite stuff. It wasn't just one single episode. It was kind of peppered throughout. There was one episode that was kind of focused on it. The Dream Team stuff is always the greatest for me. It's one of my earliest memories of falling in love with basketball. And the Dream Team just trounces everybody. And falling in love with the whole NBA and not just the Lakers, right? Because Magic's on the team, but he's kind of, he's already retired. It's at the, twilight of his career. And just seeing guys like Barkley and Jordan and Pippen and even the big guys, Pat Ewing and Robinson and Malone, all these guys just dominate the international players was a pretty amazing thing. And hearing the stories from behind the scenes is always great. There's the famous greatest game that was ever played, which there's apparently tape out there of, but it's a kind of famous practice between, I believe it was Jordan and Pippen were on one side, and Barkley and Magic, and I can't remember who else were on the other side. And apparently they split a lot of their practices as far, they were pretty equally matched. But this one where Magic and Barkley's team was kind of dominating, and one of them, I think it was Magic, told Michael, "You're going to have to become Air Jordan if you want to bring your team back from this one." Started trash talking him, and then Jordan just took over and scored like 16 straight points or something like that. I can't remember exactly what it was. And they were all just kind of in awe, like, "Yeah, this guy's the best player we've ever seen. Like, this is incredible." He had just come off their first championship, so everyone knew he was ascendant, but he was showing there that he was the greatest at the time. And those stories are amazing to me. I wish we could find those tapes of those practices, because to a guy, they all say it was the most competitive games they had ever played, those practices.
Do you love that stuff because it just gives you a sneak peek into greatness? Like, and I know you love the sport of basketball. So is that like the form, like the platonic ideal? Like, is that kind of what you're getting a glimpse into, you think?
Yeah, man. That's just the greatest ever going against each other.
Yeah.
And they took pride in it. Like, they cared about beating one another.
Did you guys ever have those moments when you were watching this documentary where you would audibly go "Oh shit," or anything like that?
Yeah.
Yeah, because the basketball was so good, the intensity, the story, something like I had a few of those moments, and yeah, definitely the behind the scenes, like I laughed because I didn't even know what to do physically, but like whatever the response was, it came out as like a laughter, like a kind of like a, "Oh my god, that's so fucking crazy," like it was like ascending to the heights of greatness in this sport throughout the documentary. I don't know, I loved that.
Dude, when Jordan, every time I see Jordan's dunk on Ewing, yeah, incredible. And they had so many great music cues to go with what you were watching, where like the moment would hit, and then a song would hit right at the same time, or crescendo at the same time. And they put that together really well.
Yeah, I really dug the editing of the whole thing, how it was put together. I really dug how they went back and forth between the second three-peat and the first three-peat, and then they would go back even further to like Jordan's high school, or like I didn't know about Steve Kerr's dad. Like, I had no idea he was killed in Beirut. Like that, and I didn't know that he was like a scholar of Middle East, and that his mom's. And I'm like, oh, that's why he's so fucking articulate about political issues and why he's got his positions that he does. I'm like, oh shit, this all makes sense now. So stuff like that, I really liked how they did and then of course they had that visual timeline that they would go back and forth between history, and they kind of wove it all together. It was and then of course you talk about the music and the behind the scenes footage. The way that it was put together, I thought was actually really well done, just from a formal perspective as well. It was fucking cool, man.
Yeah, that was cool. I could spend 10 hours just watching players reacting to what they're watching on the iPad.
Dude.
You know, they put the iPad out in front of Jordan. He's like listening to someone else talk or watching a play. Like I'm here for 10 hours of athlete shit talking. Just elite level, greatest of all time shit talking.
Dude, that's by far the best part of all of this. So just watching Jordan's face, looking at an iPad while Isaiah Thomas is bullshitting or Reinsdorf is bullshitting, and him just with that smirk of like, "Fuck this guy, man, whatever."
My favorite was when he laughs and does that little head tossle. I think was that when Reggie Miller said that they, or was that when
Gary Payton
said that he could have guarded him?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the funny thing about
I
that,
didn't have a problem with the glove, man. I didn't have no problem with the glove.
I didn't have a problem with the glove. The funny thing is, he did have a problem with the glove.
Yeah, he did.
But he's just like dismissing it out of hand. That's what I need. I need pettiness. I need lies. I need bravado. Give it to me.
Yeah.
And just the shit talking and the trash talking. That's part of the best part of the behind the scenes stuff, right? Is you see them actually saying things that they say to each other. Shit talking behind the scenes that aren't going to be approved for, the general audience. And so there's several of them, like he and Bird. What was it when he beat the Pacers and Bird was coaching, and he goes back and gives him a hug and just says, "You bitch, fuck you," and then leaves.
Oh man, people want like moralistically or like, oh, we need better sportsmanship and we need yada yada. Stand up and embrace defeat graciously or success graciously, and it's like, no, man, fuck you, bitch, I got you.
Yeah.
Well, what's great is I think it
actually
actually is respectful.
Milk,
like, yeah, you don't shit talk someone you don't respect. You just dunk on them and then leave. Like, you don't care about them, right? You shit talk someone you actually respect.
Unless you're Jordan.
I was gonna say unless you're Jordan, because
he's here for Scott Burrell. He's here for that other poor dude.
That shit is just cruel. Yeah.
What's the name of that dude, the rookie guy that he made up the story about? Like,
oh yeah, I couldn't even remember that guy's name.
Yeah. So for people listening, so there's this famous story that there's this rookie who comes in who has a really good game against the Bulls, puts up like 36 or 37 or something like that, and at the end of the game, like goes up to Jordan and says, "Good game, Mike," something along those lines. And Jordan, I guess, told that to players or to the media or something like that, and used that as fuel for the next game, and basically said, I'm going to score his entire point total from the game in the first half. And he basically does, right? The guy scored 37 the game before, and he scored 36 in the first half or whatever. And then I think I had heard this before, that actually never happened, that the rookie guy never made that comment after the game. But Jordan fucking manufactured this to use this as motivation so that he could go out and rip up this rookie, man. The guy's a fucking nobody. It's not like he respects the guy. He's like, he just needed to manufacture some bullshit story so that he could go out there and do it. And he constantly did that, right? He constantly manufactured shit.
Yeah, it's really weird, man. Like, I know people need weird motivations to engage in like extremely competitive athletics and stuff like that. But it's weird to think the psychological nature or status of like making up beliefs and convincing yourself that it's true. There's one where George Karl, when they're playing the Sonics the finals, George Karl, who also went to North Carolina, so he and Jordan had a previous relationship and respect for one another, and George Karl just like passes him in the restaurant right before the finals started or something.
Yeah. And
he just goes, the classic Jordan line that he says like 37 times in the documentary, that was it, that's all I needed.
Yeah, that was it. Yeah. Like and then like Malone wins the MVP one year, so that's his motivation to like turn it up an extra notch. George Karl walks past him, he was constantly feeling like he wasn't getting everything, and it was like he needed everything, right, or something. I don't know what it was, but yeah, it was fucking crazy.
Which makes you think, dude, as competitive as he is, and clearly he's psychotically competitive, right, to the point of having to make up epistemic justification for his performances. This dude is a terrible judge of talent as an owner. With the Hornets, just god awful, one of the worst in the league. How does he satisfy his competitive nature, constantly losing and constantly never even like coming close to anything competitive. Never really like the best player they've ever had. I think he's ever drafted was Kemba Walker, as far as I can remember, who made like one All-Star team before they traded him away. So I can't imagine what he goes through because he's got to be as competitive being an owner as he was as a player, or at least 70% of it, and he can't be satisfying that right now. He must be miserable.
He must be miserable. How miserable must it be if you're one of the players that he drafted? And he's just like, you're walking through the office and Jordan comes by and is just like, you bitch, like under his breath. And you're like, bro, what? I'm trying out here. I'm practicing. I'm doing the drills. And he's just looking at him just with full condescension, full disgust and contempt. Just like, you disgust me.
I mean, do you think he's just one of those dudes that I don't know. Like, I'm sure he gets his rocks off somehow with making the money that he makes. Obviously, he's enjoying the whiskey and the cigars, and he's got a badass pad, so he's cool with that. But like, maybe his competitive nature doesn't extend to him being an executive. Maybe he is still living in the glory days of being the player, and that's the problem, right? Because I mean, how many people are amazing players and then they try to go and be a coach and they're not as good at being a coach. So maybe there is some sort of like incommensurability there, but maybe also like that's why he releases this documentary. Maybe that's why he has the trophy room, that business that his son runs. Maybe that's why he has his brand that is still Air Jordan, that is still pushing out sneakers, because he can dominate in those things and that's what he knows he's good at. So as long as he can dominate in those things, then that's okay for him, and he just is like, fuck it, I don't care. I'm making my millions as an owner.
I mean, the least you can say for it is, as bad as he is as a judge of talent and as an executive, he's better than Magic Johnson was in any of those things. So, but at least, Magic seems to have the ability to be competitive in business and other ventures that he cares about,
right?
Whatever his positions are in those things, right?
Yeah.
Whereas Jordan still wants to be involved 100% in basketball, it seems like.
Magic, like, appears happy. Whenever you see him, he's always got a big, broad smile. He's, slapping hands with everybody. He's been the mayor of Los Angeles for decades. Jordan doesn't look super happy, man.
No, what's up with his eyes? Is he just drunk all the time, or they're like super red all the time?
Yeah, he's got the cheddar cheese eyes. It's unfortunate.
Is it because he's drunk? Is that what the deal is?
Oh, they're for sure giving him whiskey before these shoots, right, to make sure that he's ready and loose.
Yes.
Dude, he had a glass of whiskey next to him and a fucking cigar for most of the interviews,
And most of the games apparently too. So here's the thing, right? Guys like Kobe were renowned for incredible work ethic, always being prepared for everything, right? And so we kind of assume, and LeBron kind of similar, except for his like wine drinking habit. You kind of assume Jordan was the same way, and clearly he was in terms of like practice and work ethic. But this dude seems like he smoked giant cigars before every game, drank himself silly, and ate entire pizzas by himself the night before a finals game. Like, how bad do you feel if he beat your ass after smoking a giant stogie and then eating a whole pizza?
Yeah, you're bodied up on him and you're just like, dude, this dude stinks. This dude is musty as hell, and he's just waxing me right now. There's nothing I can do about it. This guy smells like
so kind of related.
cigar.
Did you guys hear about Percy Harvin, the NFL player that came out that basically said he was high for every single game he played in the NFL?
That I think is pretty common. Like, not to bring everything back to the Warriors, but that We Believe team, they were so high. Like, Coach was super high. Don Nelson's got his own marijuana farm in Hawaii.
Yeah.
Does he?
Yeah. Yeah. People are playing pretty high.
Yeah. Yeah, see, I know this in the jiu-jitsu and mixed martial arts world, that it's freaking huge, and so they've had to loosen up restrictions on actually using it for medicinal purposes, but also just because now it's recreationally legal in so many states around the U.S. But this is like the dirty secret of athletics, right? Like, wasn't there a dude, I think, in the Olympics, a snowboarder that got his medal stripped because he was high on marijuana, and that's a performance-enhancing drug or something? It's like, what the fuck?
Yeah, that stuff's always wild, man.
I know. But it does relax you and everything, so I don't know.
I mean, that was, Ricky Williams famously was kicked out of the NFL multiple times for smoking weed. Yeah.
Yeah, and then he retired because he basically just wanted to smoke weed and was like, fuck this, I keep getting these suspensions, right?
Yeah.
Of course, he came back, but yeah. I know. All right, what else? Troy, what else you want to talk about?
I got a question for you guys. So there's been some pushback on the documentary from several sources, I think most prominent of which is Ken Burns, the famous documentarian. And he criticized The Last Dance in large part, I think, because, Jordan having exclusive control over the whole documentary and when it was released, what's in it, all that kind of stuff, seems to, in some sense, be in tension with the documentary itself purporting to be about the Bulls in 1998, largely, right? And the sort of team dynamics and overcoming adversity to win the 6th championship and stuff like that. And that Jordan having control over what's said and it really being a documentary almost entirely about Jordan, with short shrift given to even the other major figures like Pippen, Rodman, and Phil Jackson. They get their little, third half episodes or so, but it's really about how it revolves around Jordan's legacy in the end. What do you guys think about that criticism? That Last Dance isn't really like objective documentarian, or doesn't really fit like documentarian ethics that are appropriate to something like sports history or athletic history.
I mean, I think that's pretty unquestionably true. This was a documentary that came together with the principal subject as the owner of the film, and there's 2 other corporations in partnership with each other who are putting it together. Like, of course, it's only showing you what they want to show you. But I think that if you take this documentary more as an autobiography and just like a nostalgia trip, then it's really enjoyable. But I don't know, the things that you glean and that you learn, I think, are incidental rather than primary. Primarily, it's just a nostalgia trip, and you're just there to have a good time.
Also, I mean, The Last Dance really was Jordan's team. It kind of was Jordan's story, That doesn't mean that athletics, basketball isn't a team sport and that there aren't all kinds of things, everything from the executive story all the way down to like the role players that need to be considered. But there is a way of telling that story that is more just simply team focused. But I think that there's this wonderful mythological story that you can tell that was told in this way, that it's told through the lens of Jordan, this being Jordan's swan song, right? Ignoring for the fact that he came back, a few years later, quite a few years later, and had his encore with the Wizards. But like,
yeah, that never happened, dude.
Episodes 11 and 12. Let's get them.
I wondered if they were going to go into that, but then I was like, no, they couldn't do that because that would tarnish the myth, that would tarnish the legacy. Whereas this is a documentary that is a narrative, right? It's a narratival fiction, or I'm sorry, it's a narratival nonfiction. And of course, it's going to be told from a perspective, and it's going to be subjective. I don't know if I buy into the whole documentarian ethics that you're trying to be objective and stuff like that. Because first of all, I just don't think that that's possible, and second of all, I just don't think that that's something that's even desirable, right? Like I want the kind of like narrow focus. I want the skewed perspective. I want to be able to, because when you lie and you like wrap it up and like, oh, this is pure objectivity. I'm just letting the subjects speak for themselves. You're lying. You're actually hiding the ideology. Whereas at least this is fucking extremely clear that we know the bias going into it.
Yeah, I don't need like the New York Times sort of like, we're stepping back and we're just telling you what everyone said, bro. Like
yeah, right.
Just come out with it. This is Jordan's doc. He's calling Scott Burrell a hoe, and that's what it is.
Yeah, I mean, I agree that the idea that you can just stand back and tell the unvarnished truth whatsoever is not the way documentaries are actually done. They always are going to have some sort of narratival perspective. You can do that more and less responsibly. And so if this was a pure documentary, it would have been very irresponsibly done in that way. But who gives a shit? Like, this is clearly just seeing Jordan. This is entertainment, right? It's seeing Jordan kind of relive his moments of glory, react to what the people he was dealing with at the time have to say about it. Isaiah Thomas, Gary Payton, Magic, Pippen, everything else. And having fun going through that, like Matt's saying, the nostalgia trip with Jordan. It's kind of experiencing as if you're kind of on the couch next to him, smoking a cigar, drinking some whiskey, and asking him questions about, the 6 championships, which is all you'd want it to be.
Yeah, and I think it's actually very true to a particular angle, right? In the sense that, like, by going on this nostalgia trip through the lens of Jordan's interpretation, you actually get, like, a particular narrative that actually exists in the public consciousness, and you get to, like, almost live it heightened, in a heightened sense. You get to live the Air Jordan experience, but in 2020, right? And I think that's what's so cool about it, is that if you're not coming at it from a critical perspective, then you might get annoyed, or you might get caught up in the mystification. But I enjoy the myth. Like, I want to live in that myth, because then I think, to me, I'm like, oh, obviously it's myth, so let's just forget about that. Let's enjoy it. But then also, too, it becomes a really interesting cultural artifact, you know?
And you're getting something different, too, because as you mentioned, Austin, like, Jordan at the time was such an other that you had no idea what was going on in his head. And he was such a corporate figurehead for so many different entities that he talked about this in the documentary, like, he was really trying to keep himself in a very narrow lane, a very narrow box, and he's letting you see him as a great athlete, but that's pretty much it. And you hear these stories and you read these different books about what a maniac and sociopath Jordan was, but you didn't get that necessarily from Jordan straight away. And in this documentary, you're able to hear, like, oh, wow, you know, those stories that I had heard before that I'm seeing replayed here are now animated in a different way.
What did you guys... There was one point that I was actually really surprised with, and I kind of wanted to, like, psychoanalyze it. Remember the bit when he starts to cry about being like, if you don't want to win in the same way that I do, and then he actually starts to get choked up and he can't do it anymore, and he calls a break in the interview. Like, taking the fact that he's probably boozed up at that point out of it for a second, why does he cry at that point? Like, what is it? Do you think it's just that he was like he's so frustrated that other people didn't get him, and that they didn't like what is it? Is it that he loves winning so much? I think that's bullshit. That's like some, like, oh, he just loves winning so much. No. There's something personal here that he has taken as like a personal slight, and that's why he started crying there, I think. What do you guys think was going on?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right to say that it's worthy of, you know, being psychoanalyzed, because there's a long strain of, like, Jordan's relationship with his father, which was clearly one that was, like, the most important relationship to him in his life, to the point where after his father was, you know, murdered in the mid-90s, he both quits basketball and, even when he comes back, surrounds himself with old African-American dudes who are, you know, interestingly, non-coincidentally, just like his father, personality-wise, who are there to be by his side at all times, giving him advice. And he even shows genuine affection for, was it the guy Gus, who was like his head of his security team, who gets cancer and he has to go have surgery, and Jordan's like there by his bedside, which is not the thing you expect from the multimillionaire, most famous person in the world. So there's just like a strong strain, it seems to me, of we call him a psychopath because he acts like that competitively, but he clearly has an emotional and like a deep, affectionate side where he probably wonders whether he's lived his life in the way that makes him the most satisfied and happy by giving into his competitive edge, or making his competitive nature giving it priority over anything else. I bet he wonders that a lot, because he seems to have some doubts about whether he's treated people the best way that he could have, or whether it's really ultimately right. And he seems to come back to the conclusion that, I mean, I won the championships and I'm the greatest basketball player ever, and so I guess I think that's justified. That justifies what I've done. But he seems to have some doubts about that. Like, it's not something that he's fully internalized and accepted.
Yeah, he voiced that a little bit. You know, that part of the reason that this footage sat on ice for so long, and part of the reason why he was nervous about it coming out now, is he said that he thought that it would affect the way that people thought of him. That he would come across basically too ugly, too mean, you know, and that's something that I think that he understands. He doesn't understand how other people, which is part of why, you know, he would be a bad coach. He's been a bad GM and owner. He doesn't understand not being this way, you know. Like, he's looking at Scottie Pippen with a migraine, and he's like, "Why aren't you out there? I'd be out there," you know. Like, he doesn't.
Right.
He doesn't. He understands that there's something that is innate to him that's not in other people, and something that drives him that's not in other people. And I think that he does seem to be a little self-conscious about it.
Yeah,
which
that's
makes him a
interesting.
really interesting subject, right? And they don't do too much with that, but the moments where he is actually introspective and wondering about how his image is affected and whether or not he's actually done good in the world by being so competitive and delivering great things in the form of entertainment and whatnot, but maybe he wasn't the greatest person. Those are the most interesting personal moments in the documentary, I think. And I applaud them for at least, getting down to that a few times, even if it was mostly just, shit talking.
Yeah.
Because that's also something that people talk about when they talk about the greatest athlete. And one of the things that always comes up with Muhammad Ali is that Muhammad Ali is the greatest because he also had this political and humanitarian element to him. It wasn't just the fact that he was a dominant champion, right? So it's like one of the things that you can say about LeBron is that LeBron is also got a really rich humanitarian, socio-political set of concerns. He's also a really kind of important brand ambassador. He's also a good role model, right? Like his whole thing with like wanting to play every game, and I think Jordan even echoed it, but like he's like, I want to play every game. He's like, because what if some kid is there and this is the only game they can go see and they came to see me play, I'm going to play. So there's something that he's playing for something bigger than just himself, bigger than just winning, I would say. And that almost makes the conversation totally different for how you the criteria by which you judge Jordan versus LeBron. Jordan might be the greatest winner, competitor, but like LeBron has a different set of criteria by which I think we actually judge him in terms of being a personality in the 21st century.
Yeah, it's also fun that they're both huge dorks when it comes down to it. They're both so isolated from, actually being judged by their, social actions because they've been in the spotlight their entire lives, that they're both huge dorks. The way that Jordan dresses and the way that LeBron does his Taco Tuesday bullshit.
You mean it's not like the cool guy aloofness stuff that you get?
Yeah, like Kobe was mostly that cool guy, except for like that one photo shoot he did with like the all white. Have you guys seen
that photo shoot.
That was the moment where Kobe exposed some of the dorkiness at the heart of someone who's never really been able to undergo full like social judgment process.
Yeah.
Well, I guess we're kind of maybe coming up towards the end here. What's your final takeaway? Something else you wanted to say, or biggest thing, or whatever? Is there anything else you wanted to add before we wrap up?
I got a couple of questions I wanted to run by Telly and see what he thought about them.
All right.
One was, we mentioned earlier that there's a series of lies that Jordan tells throughout the whole documentary series, right? And one of the big ones that even became a big issue on in the cultural conversation, I think, after it aired, was in 91 when the Bulls finally oust the Pistons, who had beat them something like 3 years in a row. And the Pistons had won the previous two championships in 89 and 90. Although they only beat the Lakers because Magic and Byron were hurt. Just a little history there. The Bulls finally oust the Pistons. It's their great rival at the time. And infamously, the Pistons walk off the floor with 10 seconds left. Don't shake the hands of the Bulls, which the Bulls had always done when the Pistons beat them in previous years. And there's this kind of story around it where Jordan held that against Isaiah Thomas, who was the best player and leader of the Pistons. So much so that he even kept Isaiah Thomas from being on the Dream Team the next summer. And Isaiah Thomas clearly deserved as one of the best players ever to be on that team. What did you think about the whole shaking hands thing? Is that really what it's talked up to be? Do you think that the Pistons and Thomas in particular had really done something unforgivable in that sense, or is Jordan overreacting?
Jordan, you can always assume if there's a question, the answer is Jordan's overreacting. Every single time. Dude, was it kind of whack? It was kind of whack, but that's really as much as it is. Nobody's for real mad about that. People, you tell yourself that you're mad about it, but nobody's actually mad about it. I think Isaiah in the doc pointed out that the Celtics did the same thing the year before to them. It's something that everybody's fave has walked off the court at some point without shaking hands. It's not a big deal. I don't understand. Like my man always wants to just make beef up in his head. Nobody cares.
Yeah. Yeah. But I've known people like that in life, right? Where they're like, remember that one time at the party that person did this thing? I'm like, bro, what? What are you talking about? Like, whether or not it happened, who cares? Like, get the fuck over it. Like, the Pistons clearly did it because wasn't it I think it was someone said that Bill Laimbeer went over to Isaiah and was like, we're not shaking these motherfuckers' hands or something like that. Like, I kind of like that. Like, from a like dudes just being dudes and kind of like, oh, fuck these. I kind of think that's funny. Now, do I think that's sportsmanlike? No. Do I think it's stupid and petty? Yes. But I think it's kind of fun. Like, there's something kind of like, oh, these motherfuckers did that? Okay, cool. But to hold it as a grudge where you actually withhold somebody from being on a team and clearly still use it as some kind of ammunition, I think that's where it gets a little weird. Like, it gets weird. Like, actually weird.
Yeah, dude. I mean, a lot of people didn't like Isaiah Thomas. I mean, I think the rumor was that he was really good friends with Magic Johnson throughout their whole career. Magic being from Michigan, Isaiah plays up in Detroit his whole career. And when Magic got HIV, Isaiah Thomas spread rumors about Magic's sexuality behind the scenes, which had a lot of credence given their close relationship. Magic held that against Isaiah, but Jordan clearly cared more about the shaking hands thing than Magic cared about the questioning my sexuality thing, which in 1991 would have been, much more hurtful than it probably would have been today, given how people would have taken that. And it would have hurt Magic's brand and his, reputation and stuff, given the time. So, yeah, it's clearly a case where Jordan's using things as fuel, but then also extending that beyond to like ruin a guy's career. Like if Isaiah Thomas had been on the Dream Team, I'm sure that his reputation and stature today would have been much better than it is now.
Yeah, that dude was great, and nobody really thinks of him that way. And there were a couple
Isaiah?
things. Yeah, Isaiah. Like that dude was great, and for him to be able to be like taking a team to the finals consistently at his size was completely unheard of at the time. As Troy mentioned earlier, like little guys didn't make it. Even Jordan was considered to be too small to really be a reliable leader. Obviously once he started playing, those concerns went away. But
and Isaiah Thomas was 5'11".
Yeah, that's crazy. That's crazy.
Yeah, if you want some good Isaiah Thomas footage, I think it's the 1988 finals, the Lakers versus the Pistons. And Isaiah Thomas sprains his ankle right before halftime, something like that. Comes out hobbling on one leg in the second half and scores like 20-something points in the fourth quarter or whatever it is. And he's clearly like he's taking jump shots and falling on one leg.
Yeah.
So he doesn't hurt himself.
Yeah, that's the stuff that, we love. Those are the mythologies that we like really get after. But he also had like two complications. One, he's from Chicago, played in Detroit. And so he's like the best basketball player that had ever come out of Chicago at that time. But then Jordan's the best player in Chicago. And so that kind of leads to some weird things. And Jordan was very involved in the community there. So like he would have been into it. So you can see that there's ways that would be complicated. And Isaiah had made the comments about Larry Bird a year or two before.
Yeah.
And that really has changed public opinion about him as well.
What did he say about Larry?
He said that if Larry Bird was black, he'd just be another guy.
Oh.
And
which is the dumbest shit imaginable.
It's really dumb. And he was repeating that, I think, from someone else. It was inexcusably dumb, but he and Bird were fine after that. Because if anybody was anti-white player in the NBA, it was Larry Bird. Larry Bird would consistently be offended if he was defended by a white player. He was
really,
yeah.
Well,
it was pretty funny.
Remember though, we learned from Space Jam that Larry's not white; he's clear. So,
yeah.
Hey, what do you guys think? What do you guys think about them going into the famous rumor, the famous conspiracy theory that Jordan was forced to retire because of his gambling debt? First of all, I'm really glad they actually went into that, but What did you guys think about it? Because I really want that to be true. I want that to be true, and I want the Magic Johnson rumors to be true, just because I think they're fucking insane.
I mean, I just don't get how it works. Like the only reason to suspend a guy is because you're showing to the public that we're making these guys responsible for their actions, right? That's the reason why you suspend a guy. Why would you suspend the guy who is responsible for like half of your league revenue alone, right? For a year and a half, and not even publicize it as hey, we're actually holding him responsible. I just don't get it. Like, they would just push everything under the rug if all they cared about was protecting the league status and stuff like that. I don't get why you make him go away for a year and a half.
This is my theory in support of the conspiracy, that he was actually gambling on basketball too. And then, I don't believe this, okay? I'm just saying this was fun. That what if he were gambling on basketball too? And you've obviously got the Pete Rose debacle with Major League Baseball. And so what Stern does is he nips it in the bud before all of this shit can get out, tells Jordan to fucking cool off, this shit can't happen anymore, right? And that's the idea. It isn't a suspension, but it's much more of like a, yo, you got to stop doing this, and I'm asking you to step away. Or maybe he was even like technically fired or released or something like that because they knew that it would be a debacle. That would be the only way that I could see it really making much sense.
Wouldn't the whole reason for doing that and threatening him be to safeguard the league's revenue, which you then kill for all the time that he's gone?
Yeah, but you know he's coming back. And when he comes back, then it'll be the triumphant return and your valuations go through the roof.
That's pretty speculative, man. Like, he changes his whole body. He becomes like a 230-pound, heavy-legged slugger, right? I mean, that's a lot.
Yeah.
I don't buy that one. You could talk to me about David Stern rigging the NBA draft in favor of the Knicks. I'm here for that one.
Yeah.
But the Jordan one doesn't make sense to me.
It's the envelope, man. It had a bent corner on it.
You can see it, bro. If you zoom in,
you zoom in, you can see it. He's digging around to find the one with the bent corner.
Yeah, no, that was good. I want to get into my favorite sociopathic Jordan moment.
All right, what is it?
All right,
yeah.
So like obviously he talks a lot of shit to a lot of people. He's the famous like clip of him gripping that baseball bat with a cigar in his mouth, just like silently contemplating how he's going to ruin all the players that he sees the next day. But to me, it's the Kenny Lattimore tape. That's
the dorkiness coming out again,
dude. Yeah. That's how you know he's a sociopath, right? So like we all played high school sports, and you put together a mixtape where you have really aggressive music to get you up to the level of playing with that aggression and fire. Jordan, the truly crazy ones, listen to music to bring them down. Where they bring their aggression down to a manageable place. Like he's not listening to Metallica. He doesn't listen to rap. He's out there listening to R&B, and that's how you know that he's truly crazy. James Harrison, that crazy motherfucker from the Steelers, he was out there listening to R&B music. It's like the guy that gets into a fight and he's crying while he's throwing punches.
Yeah.
Like these are sociopaths. You just can't trust yourself around them. You got to watch the whole time. He's listening to Kenny Lattimore, bro. Who does that? And he's stunting on him like, Jesus. Oh, I got the new Kenny Lattimore tape. No one's heard this before. And everyone's like, yeah. No one's going to hear it. What are you talking about?
Hey, I will say Kenny Lattimore had a moment on Twitter right after this.
He did.
Oh, no.
He had a moment. Yeah, he had an absolute moment on Twitter where he was like, yeah, my shit was featured. And I was like, I had to Google who Kenny Lattimore was.
Man.
I didn't know.
Yeah, stay away. Once you hear that, like, if I'm in the other locker room, I'm like, all right, that's it. I think my hammy's sore. I don't need those problems.
Yeah, that's some like Michael Madsen in a Reservoir Dogs shit. Like,
yes. Yeah, Michael Jordan's a Quentin Tarantino character. That's what we've decided through this.
Dude, if we had Quentin Tarantino doing the Jordan movie, that would be amazing.
I'll put $50.
And it'd have to have a revisionist ending too.
Yes. Yeah. And the revisionist ending, I think LeBradford Smith ends up taking him down in the finals or something. Just after that time that Jordan went after him. Yeah.
All right, so I got a question we can maybe end on here. So, given that this format of a 10-part documentary that's mostly built around shit talking and nostalgia is now going to be a formula that others replicate, which would you guys rather see as the next Last Dance? A 10-part documentary series on the Shaq Kobe Lakers or on the Hamptons 5 Warriors?
Personally, it's the Shaq Kobe Lakers.
Even if you don't get to involve Kobe?
I mean, yeah, I guess that's a good point without Kobe being involved. Yeah, that's a really good point. Oh, fuck, I guess the documentary, it wouldn't be the same, would it?
Because he'd have the best zingers, for sure.
For sure.
Yeah, having him and Shaq go back and forth after each other. You know what, Kobe? You're an idiot. You know, just like doing his thing, and then, yeah.
Do we have behind-the-scenes footage of a lot of their run?
I mean, I'm sure we have a good amount, given that it was LA and there was just tons and tons of media around. But it would probably mostly be anecdotal. I mean, I'm not sure how much video footage there is.
Which is the best?
Theoretically, it would be rad if there were a Kobe doc, because then you'd have the Kobe Shaq, but then you'd also have like the Kobe Gasol Lakers, right? And there was some really good like basketball rivalry, but also the stories about Kobe punching players in practice and shit like that. And then like it'd be really interesting to go into, remember that bit before they get Pau Gasol where he straight up says, "I want to be traded" on the radio? And I remember I was at college, bro. I was at college. And I remember listening on fucking, I don't remember who he was talking with, Paulus, whatever, who was it, like Westwood One or whatever he was being interviewed by, and he's like, they're like, "Are you saying you want to be traded?" He's like, "Yeah, I want to be traded." I was like, oh, I remember listening to that over and over, and I was like, somehow I heard it wrong. I was like, did he actually straight up say, "I want to be traded"? That was the craziest thing.
I remember dissecting that interview and then going onto ESPN and looking at Luol Deng's stats just to console myself. Like, maybe it won't be that bad. Maybe it won't be that bad. Luol Deng's kind of good.
Oh man. Dude, that was incredible. I was in college with you guys at the time. There in LA.
Yeah.
I'm a Warriors fan, but I'm also a LeBron fan at that time because being a Warriors fan, like there's 4 games on television where we lose every one of them. But the whole Kobe LeBron thing, I felt that LeBron was better, like genuinely, but I also thought it was really funny because, like, you say anything about Kobe in LA and people lose their minds. Like back then, at this point, I don't even know what it would be, but like, yeah, man, like Kobe was just wanted to get out. He was like, "No, I'm at peace. I'm out," and he quit in the playoffs the year before against the Suns. It was like all weird and fun. The Warriors don't have any footage from the Hampton 5. Unfortunately, because Klay Thompson's dad or uncle was the one who took the footage in the Jordan doc, and he wanted to take footage.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, and he wanted to do the same thing with the Warriors last year, and Steve Kerr's like, "Hell no."
Oh, that would have been so great.
Dude, can you imagine?
Can you imagine all the background Draymond footage? Oh, it would be gold.
Dude, all the Durant footage. That dude.
Would they go into his burner Twitter accounts that he has and shit like that?
He would get into these hour-long arguments with random Twitter followers in his DMs. Like, if you were just a guy with 50 followers in the Bay Area and you said something about Durant, he'll find you and then start arguing with you about it. It's the weirdest thing.
Yeah. Yeah, that is so weird, man. Yeah, I think my biggest takeaway from this whole thing, and I kind of even tweeted about it, was like I grew up, everyone did singing "Be Like Mike," I want to be like Mike, and you've got the Nike "Just Do It" and shit like that. And one of the things that really was my biggest takeaway from this whole doco was that Jordan was a bit of a psychotic when it came to his competitive spirit. Like he wanted everything, he needed it all. And I've been thinking a lot because, just in terms of like media studies stuff, I've been thinking a lot about like Insta culture and like kind of like late neoliberal positivity where it's like you can do you and success is measured by this and everyone is obsessed with success and success and success and success. I really think that everybody thinks that they're like a fucking superstar athlete. Like I think that everybody goes to the gym or everybody tries to like face Monday. Not everybody, but a large majority of people who think along these lines. I think they literally think that they're professional athletes. And I actually think that maybe we should not all try to be professional athletes, right? Like it's cool to not try to be a fucking weird psychotic who has to win at everything, you know? But it's like so cool, and it's almost become just part of like everyday life that it's just assumed that's how you ought to face your day, and that's how you ought to work in your, you know, mid-level management position, or that's how you ought to like do every fucking thing that you do for the corporate world. I don't think that's the case, man.
It's weird. I saw someone was talking about how Michael Jordan, even though he spanned across decades, was really a prototypical 80s player in his mindset and in just the things that he brought with the like greed is good type of attitude of like, I'm just going to get in there and destroy whatever's in front of me. It's really interesting to see the way that he was sort of carrying a different cultural, you know, set of norms through.
Like a product of Reagan's America almost.
Yeah, like very, very much so.
That's really interesting.
Yeah, I think there's, you know, just to do a little ethics here for a second, because it's pertinent. I think you can recognize that the things that Jordan found value in are valuable things, like competitive greatness and achieving things that other people haven't before, and, you know, great spectacles of entertainment and whatnot. And you can sort of honor those things as being valuable things in and of themselves, and then also say, but they're not as valuable as like living a good life. And
right.
Jordan's, you know, the potential of, you know, Jordan's misery right now, or the misery of anybody who I think lives life like that, is going to be evidence of the fact that they actually wonder and probably don't necessarily believe that they lived the best life they could have, while still, you know, acknowledging the fact that the things that they went after are indeed valuable. They're not worthless.
Yeah. No, it seems like the documentary was really Jordan saying like, you don't want to be me, you know, and that's something that he'd repeated over the course even in his career of like, you'd love to be Jordan for a day or for a few hours, but you wouldn't want this life. And I think he understands that, you know, the things that he thought that he was going to achieve with the greatness that he had, you know, being esteemed, having the wealth, having the glory, all of that, and he's just sort of trapped like a zoo animal in his house or wherever he is, with people surrounding him, trying to look, to touch, to get something from him. It seems like he didn't quite get everything that he was hoping for from his greatness.
Dude had to play quarters in a back room with some Weird Al looking motherfucker to get his competitive juices out. Like, he was
I love that guy so much.
That guy had a moment too on social media.
He had a moment too. He had a moment for sure.
I think he passed away, but his family certainly was happy to see him get his due. No one shrugged back at that dude. Shrugged at Jordan after beating him. No one else did that. That guy's a legend.
That was truly the greatest moment in the doc. Like everybody, nobody who went against him, like all of the greats, Isaiah, Malone, Barkley, none of them hit Jordan with that, like with something that could bring that shrug out. You know, it was just like right in his face. Man.
You know how like they always say that athletes want to be rappers or musicians, and you got like Dame, who's Dame Dalla, and he like releases his stuff, and you got all these other people like Shaq, who's released albums, and everyone's always right. And then of course there's always like that musicians want to be athletes too, so they always have like the celebrity games. Even someone like fucking Kevin Hart, who's a comedian, right? Like he plays and stuff like that. And so there's always like this like the grass is kind of greener kind of thing. Do you think that like the greatness of being a musician, a rock star, a hip hop artist, a fashion designer, or something like that pales in comparison to being like Michael Jordan? Like I'm trying to think of like maybe Michael Jackson versus Michael Jordan. Who else in music? Like maybe like Paul McCartney versus Michael Jordan. Like, is there like a greatness intensity that exhibits itself in one arena more than the other? Or do you think kind of no?
I don't know about the arena, but Jordan is up there with the Michael Jacksons. Paul McCartney walks into a room and you're not sure whose grandma he is. But, you know, like Michael Jordan walks into a room and you're like, damn, that's Michael Jordan.
You think so?
And
Yeah, there's also the
worldwide,
gravitas of your physical presence too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's true. A random NBA player versus a random rapper, I don't know. It's kind of a toss-up.
Yeah, but like the greatest of the great in music and the greatest of the great in sports, like who has a bigger cultural impact? Who's quote unquote greater or bigger,
I think it's so much of you see the face of the athlete, like especially with basketball. And I don't think that it works with football. It doesn't work with baseball. Those dudes are anonymous. Mike Trout could come into my house right now and say, "He's Mike Trout," and I'd be like, "Yeah, okay, so what? Who are you again?" But like with basketball,
You just hand him a PBR and be like, "You okay, bro?"
yeah,
Yeah.
What are you here? You here to mow the lawn? Like, what are you doing? I don't know. But like
The frat party's next door, bro. Sorry.
Right. Yeah, we're playing beer pockets in the backyard. No, but like with basketball, though, it's about personalities. You can really get to know who those people are, and you see their face the whole time. When it comes to musicians, there's a lot of musicians who are from my favorite bands. I know them by face, but most musical artists I know by sound.
Oh yeah, maybe. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I always wonder. Like, I wonder who has a bigger cultural impact. I think that was one of the other things that I took away from this was just how much of a cultural impact Jordan had. Like, I guess I knew it, but thinking about how basketball has been exported, which is a very particular American industry, right? How it's been exported now around the world through Jordan as being the conduit because of that picture, the picture of him dunking with the legs spread that has been branded on shoes and shirts and everything like that, that how that kind of impacts changing the world, like in a literal sense. There's a socioeconomic kind of homogenization that is partly indebted to this dude, right? And maybe you could say the same thing about Michael Jackson, but I don't know because Jackson's a brand, but he isn't something that people wear. He isn't something that there's no, I want to be like Michael Jackson, thank God. But like, people want to be like Mike. People want the Mamba mentality. People want to wear the shoe. They want to exhibit the insignia. It has a different kind of cultural impact. So I almost wonder if sports, like the movie Any Given Sunday, fucking Al Pacino, doesn't he have that speech where it almost makes it seem like the athletes today are like the warriors and like the Hercules and shit like that of the Homeric age? So I wonder if that's kind of true,
Yeah, there's something about dominating somebody else, especially in basketball, where you do it oftentimes. The most famous scenes are dunking on a guy or hitting a shot over a guy to win a game. Like
right.
Jordan's pushing Brian Russell away to hit that jumper, the last jumper he makes in 98 to win the finals. Something about that you don't have in music, and that probably brings back that notion of like dominance of others or competition or whatever that ties us into something that's just primordial for us. That music being more about sort of being evocative and about expression. It's not as much that competitive edge. Athletics seems to be the only thing left that really speaks back to that primordial human thing.
Is that Sufi freaking out in the background?
Yeah, I'm trying to read it.
No, I was going to say, listeners, that's Sufi. I think Troy talked about Sufi in the last OAD newsletter, too. So that's your introduction. He's a beautiful dog.
That's right.
Well, cool. Why don't we go ahead and wrap it up there, then? Yeah? Sound good?
Sounds good. The only other thing is Justin Timberlake's a liar, too.
Oh,
what did he lie about?
He fucking says he mowed lawns to afford to buy Jordans when he was in the Mickey Mouse Club.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
That motherfucker's lying, man.
That's right. He was in the Mickey Mouse Club.
He showed up in the Jordan doc for 15 seconds to tell audacious lies, and then that was the last we heard of him. He's back in whatever wilderness he's at.
Speaking of that, Jack McCallum, who's a famous NBA sports reporter, he did a book on the Dream Team, which is fantastic, and he's now releasing a bunch of original audio called the Dream Team tapes from guys like Barkley, Jordan, Pippen, Magic, Bird, and others. It's really a good podcast he's releasing right now. He said that he was interviewed for the Dream Team episode, and they bumped him because they had to get Justin Timberlake in.
Wow.
Yeah. Of course.
So we missed out on some good Dream Team material there because Justin Timberlake had to lie about mowing lawns.
All right, sick. Well, let's go ahead and wrap it up there. Thanks so much, Matt, for joining, man. It's always good to chat with you, brother.
Absolutely. Next time we can talk about more basketball drama or socio-political things, whatever.
I was gonna say, I think we have an episode that we wanted to do with you ages ago on reparations that we should probably actually try to tackle at some point.
We could do that, or we could just talk about Steven Jackson and Al Harrington for 2 hours.
Deal. Sounds good to me, man. All right, dude. We'll chat with you later.
Thanks, dude.